The twin suns of Kepler-4 for to be cast long shadows across the rust-colored plains as James McKenna guided his hovercycle across the frontier territories. 3 years he'd been working this god-forsaken rock, managing livestock for the Terran Colonial Authority, and he'd seen plenty of strange things. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for what he found that evening. That the distress call came through his neural implant like a whisper, barely registering above the wind. "Mama, Mama, please." James pulled his cycle to a stop, frowning. The voice was high-pitched, frightened, and decidedly not human. "Out here on the frontier, 40 light-years from Earth, you learned to trust your instincts." And his instincts told him something was very wrong. He dismounted, boots crunching on the crystalline sand, and followed the sound. Behind a cluster of obsidian rocks, he found it a creature no bigger than a house cat, scaled and winged, with luminescent patterns running down its spine. Blood seeped from a wound on its shoulder, and its breathing came in shallow gasps. A baby dragon, or what the xenobiologists called a carnid, juvenile, one of the ancient species that had ruled this sector long before humanity ever looked to the stars. "Easy there, little one," James said softly, kneeling down. His weathered hands, calloused from years of ranch work both on Earth and here, moved slowly, the creature's eyes brilliant amber with vertical pupils locked onto his face. "Mama," the voice came again, directly into his mind. Telepathic communication. The Draconids were known for it. "Nobody. I'm not your mama, but I'm going to help you." As he carefully lifted the creature, wrapping it in his jacket, James noticed the markings on the rocks nearby. Plasma burns, deliberate. Someone had dumped this baby here to die. The colony's chief medical officer, Dr. Eliana Rodriguez, was still in her lab when James burst through the doors of the Xenobiology Center. She looked up from her microscope, dark eyes widening at the bundle in his arms. "James, what is that?" "What I think it is. Draconide juvenile. Found it dumped about 20 clicks west. It's hurt, Aliana, bad." Aliana was already moving, clearing her examination table and pulling on sterile gloves. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she carefully unwrapped the creature. 5 years of xenobiological research had made her one of the foremost experts on this planet's indigenous species. But she'd never actually treated a live draconid before. They were notoriously reclusive, and their adults were the size of cargo haulers with tempers to match. "Plasma burns," she muttered, examining the wound. "This was intentional. Someone tried to kill it." "Who would do something like this?" James asked, his jaw tight. "The Vacrian Trade Consortium, probably. They've been pressuring the Draconid clans to vacate the northern territories. There are rare earth deposits, they're worth billions." Aliana's fingers flew across her datapad, pulling up medical protocols. "This little one is barely 3 weeks old. Without its mother, it won't survive long." The baby dragon whimpered, its mental voice weak. "Mama, cold, scared, Something in James's chest tightened. He'd grown up on a ranch in Montana. Before the colony ships left Earth, he'd bottle-fed orphaned calves, nursed injured horses through the night. The species might be different, but suffering was universal. "Then we'll be its family until we can find its real one," he said firmly. Aliana looked at him, a slight smile tugging at her lips despite the dire situation. This was why she'd fallen for the stubborn cowboy 3 months ago. His capacity for compassion knew no species boundaries. "You know the Draconids are protected under the Sentient Species Act," she said, already treating the wound with synthetic tissue regen. "If we report this, the authorities will investigate, but that could take weeks. This baby needs care now, so we don't report it." "Not yet." "James McKenna, are you suggesting we harbor an endangered alien species in violation of about 15 different regulations?" He grinned. "I prefer to think of it as temporary emergency guardianship." Over the next 2 weeks, James and Aliana became unlikely parents. The baby dragon whom they'd named Ember proved to be simultaneously the most demanding and most rewarding patient either had ever handled. James retrofitted one of his livestock shelters with heat lamps and soft bedding. Aliana developed a specialized nutrient formula based on draconide biochemistry. Ember grew stronger daily. Her telepathic voice became clearer, less frightened. She began forming words, concepts, memories. Bad ones came. She projected one evening as James fed her. "Hurt mama, took siblings, left me." James's blood ran cold. "Aliana, we need to hear this." They sat with Ember, and slowly, painfully, the baby dragon shared her memories. The Vacrian Consortium hadn't just threatened the Draconids they'd attacked. A coordinated strike on multiple nesting sites, adults killed, juveniles taken for the black market trade. Ember had been left behind because her wing was malformed, making her worthless. Those sons of James caught himself, remembering the baby in his arms. We're taking this to the Colonial Authority now. But Aliana was already at her terminal, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. I'm sending everything to the Interspecies Council. With Ember's testimony and the evidence we've documented, this is an open and shut case of genocide. What happened next would become legend in the frontier territories. The testimony of one baby dragon, protected by 2 humans, brought down the entire Vakrian operation on Kepler-4 for to be. The Interspecies Council dispatched peacekeepers. Surviving draconids were located and freed. Vakrian executives were arrested. But the most remarkable discovery came 3 days after the investigation began. James was in the shelter, with Ember when he felt a presence so massive, it made the ground tremble. He looked up to see a draconid adult descending from the sky, scales gleaming like molten copper in the sunlight. 30 meters from nose to tail, wings that could blot out the suns. Terror gripped him for exactly 2 seconds before Ember's mental voice rang out with pure joy. Mama. The great dragon landed with surprising gentleness, her eyes the same brilliant amber as Ember's fixed on James. And then, wonder of wonders, she bowed her massive head. Human who heard, her voice resonated through his mind, ancient and powerful. You answered when my daughter called. You showed mercy when others showed cruelty. The draconid clans do not forget debts. Aliana had emerged from the lab, standing beside James in awe. You both, the dragon continued, her gaze including them equally, have given us more than our daughter's life. You have given us hope that not all who walk on 2 legs seek to destroy. James McKenna stood in his shelter that night, watching Ember disappear into the darkening sky with her mother and reunited siblings. The baby dragon had looked back once, her mental voice clear and warm. Thank you, Papa James. Thank you, Mom. I will remember. Aliana slipped her hand into his. We just violated about 30 regulations. You know, worth it. The Colonial Authority is probably going to have questions. Let them ask. James smiled, squeezing her hand. We did the right thing. That's all that matters. High above, the dragons circled once before heading north, their telepathic song carrying across the plains a song of mourning for what was lost, but also of hope for what might be, because they had learned what humans had always known, that the measure of a civilization isn't in its weapons or its wealth, but in how it treats the weakest among them. And somewhere in the cosmos, in a battered colony on a frontier world, a cowboy and a scientist had just reminded the galaxy why humanity, for all its flaws, was worth believing in. The stars burned bright overhead, and James McKenna, guardian, friend to dragons, knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, they had saved a life, and sometimes, that was enough to change everything. End.